Thank you. My name is Hal Stryver, and I am a senior solutions engineer here at Unravel Data. For those that don't know Unravel Data, we are a data ops and FinOps industry leading observability platform built for modern data stacks like Snowflake. In today's conversation, our topic is automated cost management, leveraging AI for Snowflake optimization. So what we're going to do today is first talk a little bit about how organizations are currently trying to get a grip on and rein in cost, and why accurate forecasting of that cost remains elusive in Snowflake. Then we'll take or rather talk about some of the current tools like native, out-of-the-box, and broader cloud-based and third-party tools. And what are some of the challenges and limitations of those. Then I'm going to show you a day in the life of how Unravel, with our purpose-built AI, helps to address these challenges in order to equip FinOps and data management teams to get the very best of breed when it comes to things like automated cost management in Snowflake. So, for enterprise organizations that rely on Snowflake as one of their primary data platforms, accurate forecasting cloud costs really remains a persistent challenge. This is especially challenging as organizations continue to grow the usage of their data estates with the consistent onboarding of new and more complex applications, things with wide and varying use cases in order to leverage, those complex data warehousing analytics workloads. And this explosive growth in adoption and usage of the platform are driven by what I'll call exponential accumulation of data, right? Whether that's driven by AI workloads or other sources. And so really that year over year growth, and actually more accurately put month over month growth in some cases, right, is married in lockstep with cost accumulation. So where do some of the primary obstacles, stem from? First of all, it's a lack of granular visibility. So in Snowflake's consumption-based pricing model, that's really driven by factors like compute usage, right? Warehouse usage, right? Storage, query complexity. Without detailed insights in and at that workload level, that warehouse level as well, organizations struggle to track cost drivers effectively. Next, things like siloed cost data. So what's meant by that? So Snowflake usage data is often scattered across things like system tables and usage views and external cost management tools. And the fragmentation really prevents a holistic view of spend trends. And lastly, the absence of an AI-powered predictive tool, right? Traditional monitoring tools focus on historical spend analysis rather than things like proactive forecasting. So without an AI-driven type of insight, organizations can't really anticipate cost spikes or optimize budgets, dynamically, right? So, to my right slide here. Where are some of the problematic areas that pose really the most challenge around cost management? So here on the screen, we just kind of call out some of the main use cases and their associated kind of root causes, right? So things like, just starting at the top, warehouse compute cost and the forecasting of that. So there's really a lack of that real-time visibility into the warehouse, its scaling, the query executions running on it and their trends, things along those lines. Storage cost management, typically limited insights into things like table growth, the time travel retention, right? Automatic clustering costs, cold tables, right? When was the last time that a table was accessed? That a query actually accessed the data in that table? Could it be a candidate for a cheaper tier of storage? Cost spike prevention. So when you don't have predictive analytics to actually give you an idea of or help you to identify those sudden increases in the query execution, or even the data processing, that poses a challenge in trying to prevent those types of spikes. Chargeback and departmental cost allocation. This is typical because there's a lot of siloed data across the estate, right? Different accounts, making it a little bit more difficult to attribute costs accurately across cost centers, business units, those types of things. And then how do you correlate from those to warehouse usage and how those are performing. And then lastly, query optimization for cost efficiency. Without the automation, without the AI-driven recommendations, in order to identify inefficient queries in the first place or over-provisioned warehouses, that still remains a challenge for that data management and those FinOps teams that, again, are struggling to pull all of this disparate cost data, right, usage data together in order to have some more predictable forecasting. Okay, so that said, what tools are out there right now that those same data management, FinOps, and other teams are using currently that pose the challenges around being able to pull all that stuff together? So some of the usual suspects, right? Things like the system tables and account usage views in Snowflake itself. What do they provide? What are their capabilities? Well, it gives you the raw data on those various metrics of compute and storage and query history, right? But there's limitations therein, right? It's a manual analysis and process, right? It lacks that predictive insight from that AI driven standpoint. Resource monitors, again, yeah, you can set up some thresholds and alerts and things of that nature, but it's more reactive, right? Versus being proactive. And it doesn't prevent those overruns, right? Information schema, everybody's familiar with this. Obviously, quite a bit of detail that can be derived from that around your queries and some of the statistics with respect to those executions. But again, doesn't provide the cost forecasting, right? It doesn't have that AI-driven optimization and the recommendations around, what can you do to mitigate this? What can you do to course correct from that standpoint? And then last, things like third-party tools, Cloudability, Cloud Health, and some others. Yes, track some of the cost from a Snowflake perspective over time, but again, lacking in that native integration, right, and those predictive capabilities. So you kind of sense a theme here with respect to that. Okay, so before I jump in, what if I were to tell you that there was a tool that made it easy for all of those data management teams, those FinOps teams, to really master that cost granularity conundrum, right, if you will, with things like deep visibility into the Snowflake expenses. But also, what if it could unify all of that siloed and fragmented data with specific strategies based on effective cost management insights. And then, oh, by the way, also harness the power of AI predictive analytics, right, to transform these complex cost data, cost pieces of data that we have into actionable intelligence, which then allows you to forecast and optimize expenses confidently, right? So that tool does exist, and that is where Unravel comes in. Okay. So let me actually start here. Just to, and let me log in to make sure that we're actually seeing something here. So just to kind of accentuate the point, say you're on the FinOps team and you're tracking costs. Some of the things that you may do is use some of those out-of-the-box tools we just spoke of, like the Snowflake system tables, the information schema, usage schemas, those other resource, monitoring and third-party tools. And so while those things are great, they're good at tracking cost, maybe at that account level, kind of what I'm showing here, right? And right now you're in the Unravel UI, so we've actually done some of this as well. But track things at the account and the warehouse level, and in some cases with a little manual effort, right? User and perhaps at that query level as well. We have those subtabs here for tracking those trends and those cost trends and usage statistics. And again, we've actually done some of that here, right? So I want to refer to this as table stakes, right? And especially when we're talking about the observability tool space. Now, maybe I wanted to understand cost center trends a little bit better, or maybe I even wanted to understand where I'm wasting cost in terms of underutilization of my warehouses, and then actually track that over time based on consumption or those cost center trends. Maybe as another use case, I want to track some of that same type of wasted cost around inefficient or failed or timed out queries. How do I even know how to identify what is inefficient within those queries? And beyond that, how am I able to look at all of those jobs at scale, look at all those queries at scale in an efficient and prioritized manner? So those are just some of the questions I'd like you to consider while I walk through another piece of the UI here. So, but for us to really understand what's spiking cost, what those inefficiencies are, and actually what is the impact if I were to actually apply recommendations against those inefficiencies. Those are the things that are missing in the, what I'll call usual suspects in terms of the tools, which are out of the box. Those are pretty archaic today, right? We kind of just went through and stepped through the limitations that they suffer from. Because, yeah, they are limited in terms of scope and granularity. But not only that, they lack the intelligence, I guess I'd say, to learn about the usage trends, to learn and observe over time and over multiple runs of jobs and queries, the inefficiencies and what that impact has on the Snowflake data estate in terms of cost. But then they also just don't have the ability to proactively inform you on the problem in the first place, but what to do next to solve for it. So what we do here at Unravel is we look at a customer's overall Snowflake estate, and we look for ways to do three things. So we want to increase productivity, we want to reduce cost wastage, and we want to also improve overall performance. And so we do this by looking at and looking for inefficiencies across those areas, right? So things like the underutilization of warehouses? Are there opportunities to actually consolidate some of these or right size some of these? And we give the insight right here in this dashboard, top 5 insights, top 5 candidates really to consolidate from multiple, in this case, 4x large warehouses into one. Are there opportunities from a right sizing perspective, right? In that same infrastructure category, could we also maybe provide a schedule of which specific t-shirt sizes of warehouse is most cost effective for your job at every hour of the day and every day of the week? And oh, by the way, provide one-click application of that code to make those changes on the back end, all without sacrificing performance or worry of whether or not the SLAs will be met. And although exercises in warehouse sizing, it's not trivial, right? But in my opinion, it's not the most exciting category of inefficiencies that we've written here at Unravel into our purpose-built AI and directed it to look for. So for me, and I'm just switching to a sub insight analysis category here on the same dashboard. To me, I think the ability for Unravel to actually ferret out those inefficiencies in the job itself at that code level, that query level, right, is much more exciting because that's where the craft of the developer happens, right? In order to produce the application outcomes and hopefully produce something that is revenue generating for the organization. So, but what does that have to do with cost management, right? That being the title of the webinar, right? Well, everything, because if it were not written in efficient code, right? There are opportunities to massage that code slightly so that, we're not leaving resources and spend on the table. Then it becomes very important, right? So how can Unravel help here? Well, we can surface inefficient queries with opportunities to improve their performance and cost efficiency. So that's the important piece here to keep in mind, right? So things like SQL anti-patterns, things like join inefficiencies, slow operators, explosions in data through Cartesian products, and so many more. But then let's not also forget about wasted spend or wasted cost around those failed and timed out queries, right? I'll bet some of you in the audience probably spend a lot of time through root cause analysis of some of these things here. And, do I just move to a bigger warehouse, to prevent a query from timing out or failing? Is it just trial and error? What will that cost actually be? Does it make sense to just move it to a bigger warehouse or t-shirt size? I don't know. It's a lot of, again, trial and error and trying to understand what that cost implication would be. So all of these tasks above, right? That's what Unravel gives to you, provides to you on a silver platter, really, without you having to do all the legwork. So think about it in terms of it's like having that expert in a box who is advising you on how to apply, Snowflake or SQL best practices in, if it's code efficiencies or actually doing the root cause analysis for you into what actually failed that job, and using Unravel's purpose-built AI to identify and understand what that impact, really is. And, so speaking of impact, untapped savings, what we want to provide in each of these categories is that untapped savings metric. And so what does that mean? That means that I'm leaving dollars on the table by not applying these recommended actionable insights to whether that is my warehouse from a sizing perspective or my inefficient queries because of some sort of surfaced inefficiency there, right? So what is that dollars and cents impact? How big of a problem is this really for me? And that's something I can know pretty quickly just by understanding what is that annualized savings. So what is the annual dollar amount that I'm leaving on the table across those categories? But impact not only comes in that dollars and cents kind of form, but it has another flavor, right? And that's sometimes a little bit harder to calculate, but it's the time that you get back from troubleshooting, right? In order to focus on those more interesting and innovative tasks like building the new revenue generating application for the business, right? So this too has an inverse relationship with cost. Now, to me, that's pretty powerful. Okay, so just checking the clock here for time. I know we're about 20 minutes in, and I wanted to leave some time for questions. So let's see here. All right, we do have a few questions. So question one for me: what strategies can you employ? No, what strategies can be employed to break down those data silos and achieve a more unified view of Snowflake costs? Well, that's kind of a so I'm going to be a bit biased here when I suggest what I'm going to suggest, but hey, how about using a purpose-built FinOps and data ops platform like Unravel to be able to show things like the impact we just talked about of those inefficiencies, right? It's what I'm showing you right here in this dashboard. Maybe let it help you bring accountability to the owner of those things like those queries that are inefficiently written. Have the ability to show a unified view of where all of that spend is going, right, through a dashboard like this. But also, I guess, ways to unlock some of the and realize some of the savings. And then I guess I would say just to start to use this as a way to foster more responsible behavior and usage of, these highly capable modern data platforms like Snowflake. So that's good question. Number two, this over here. So how does granular visibility impact financial planning? So how does granular visibility impact financial planning? So I guess what I would say is to understand where all of these cost spikes are in the first place, it's essential to really get that granular detail, right? Simply knowing that that the warehouse spend has increased since last month, that's not enough these days, right? It's not going to give me enough insights to really understand where those inefficiencies are. So the further down we can break things into those granular levels, like to the query level or the user level, or to those cost centers, like through using something like Snowflake object tagging, makes it more manageable to have conversations, I'd say, with the right team or the right job owners. And then that way you can highlight inefficiencies and promote accountability, right? Maybe promote folks to be more responsible citizens of, the Snowflake platform. Okay. This looks like the last question, at least for now. What practical steps can organizations take to transition from reactive spending to proactive optimization in their Snowflake environments? practical steps can organizations take? Okay, so actually, you know what? The perfect steps or kind of model that you can foster is I'd recommend looking at FinOps.org if you haven't already. And they have what is called a flywheel. And it's really a three-phased approach. I mentioned it, I think, a little bit earlier. But we here at Unravel follow it as well. And it starts with informing information, right? And then the next phase is how do I optimize for what I'm looking at in terms of I've been informed on some inefficiencies, right? How do I optimize for that? And then how do I take it a step further and govern appropriately after that? So from an Unravel perspective, through that kind of flywheel lens, informing involves understanding those top cost drivers, right? Those teams or cost centers or individual users. So that's what I would say about that inform kind of phase. The optimization phase focuses on identifying areas for actualizing savings driven through those recommendations, right? Whether it's either at a warehouse or a code level. And then lastly, from a governance perspective, if you use tools like Unravel to track the responsibility and set the governance best practices across the organization, then it really lends itself to this more proactive kind of shift left mentality of getting in front of these issues before we have to become reactive about them. So, all right, that was the last question. I don't see more questions. So, real quick, before we break, I'm going to jump back to one more slide here. If you think that the things that I've been sharing with you today can help you, then today you can actually go and get your free Snowflake health check. And you can do that simply by visiting our URL there. So www.unraveldata.com /snowflake-health-check-request. And if you just go there and you go ahead and you check that out, it's free to you, absolutely no cost to you to do this. So I definitely would recommend, maybe try it out, try out the product, see what life could be like for you if you were to start using Unravel for your data ops and your FinOps observability and cost management use cases. So thank you for your time. Again, my name is Hal Schreiber, and I look forward to seeing everybody at the next webinar. Bye for now.